Hey guys, welcome to Swirl Culinary. Today's gonna be a fun day because we're gonna work with something we haven't worked with before, okay? So we are gonna make soft pretzels. We can either do pretzels or bites, but we'll just do the bites today, just make it a little bit easier for you guys. So let's go over ingredients and equipment we're gonna need today. It's like 6 ingredients, real easy. So I'm gonna use all-purpose flour today, about 4 cups. I'm gonna use about a tablespoon of brown sugar today, okay? We're gonna use just a little bit of kosher salt for sprinkling on them, and a little is gonna go in the dough. We're gonna use yeast, okay? We'll talk about this. So we'll go over yeast in a bit, so get yourself some yeast, like a package of yeast. We're gonna use a little bit of baking soda, okay? And I'm gonna use a little bit of nonstick spray today, but you can use canola oil or whatever you want. This is just easier. A couple different cup measures, a 1 cup, a 1/2 cup. I'm going to use a bench scraper today. If you guys don't have it at home, a knife will work. Measuring spoons today. And then I'm just going to use a liquid measurement thing. So I'm going to get a cup of half of water out of that, okay? So let's come over here real quick. Okay, so the only thing I got going on right now is I have a pot with about 9 cups of water in here, okay? Basically the biggest pot you can find, because what we're going to do is we're going to dunk our dough in here. So at this point, to this water, I'm going to add about 1/2 cup of the baking soda. Guys, don't confuse baking powder and baking soda, okay? So do this when it's cool. When the water's hot and you dump in baking soda, it sort of bubbles over. So sort of just do this when it's cool. And you don't have to worry about stirring it. Just sort of get it in there. Okay? And then we're going to turn it up. I don't need to bring it to a really hot boil, so I'm going to turn this on medium heat right now. I have a spider or a slotted spoon to get the pretzels back out. So, you know, whatever you got. I also have a pot of melted butter going right now. I've let it melt and cool down, and we're going to use this to brush the pretzels. A little bit of this is also going to go in the dough as well, but we'll get to that in a minute, okay? So let's talk yeast today. So this will be the only time we probably work with a living organism, okay? So this is yeast. It is a bacteria. And what we need to do is we're going to take a look at it. So the yeast we're going to use is these little beads, and on these little beads are, it's like a coating, and we have to dissolve the coating before the yeast starts to work, all right? So what we're going to do is I have something called a bloom jar, and we're going to make sure our yeast is alive first, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to get a 1.5 cups of lukewarm water. That means between 100 and 110 degrees. If it's too hot, it's going to kill the yeast. If it's too cold, it's not going to activate it. So we're just going to, you'll be able to tell. We want warm water. You don't have to sit with a thermostat and measure this out. We just want warm water. Okay? So yeast really likes warm water. They like warm, they like wet. So once we get this going, I'll show you guys this water. Okay? So guys, our water is nice and warm, okay? You know, it's not too hot, it's not cold, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna get a 1.5 cups. So that's 1 cup, okay, right in my little jar. If you guys wanna use a coffee cup, this works too for putting your stuff, and then we got a 1/2 cup there, okay? So we're just gonna pour this all right in here. You just need a jar big enough to hold everything, basically. You can do it in whatever you want. I use a mason jar and just make sure everything works, and you know, you can see through it so I can see the yeast actually doing its thing. So first thing we're gonna do before we put our yeast in is we're gonna get some food for our yeast. So yeast really likes to eat sugar, whether that's honey, molasses, fruit juice, brown sugar, white sugar, doesn't really matter. I like to use brown sugar in this one. I feel it gives the pretzels a little extra flavor. So I'm gonna do about a tablespoon of brown sugar. If you guys are at home and you wonder why there's bread in here, put bread in with your brown sugar, it keeps it soft. Okay, 1 second, let me just grab a spoon. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna dissolve our sugar into our water. So as I feel it, I can feel how it's warm through this, that's what I want. Okay, so you see how it's getting dissolved? Okay, so now we are gonna add our yeast. Okay, so guys, I always have this marked out, but if you're at home, 1 envelope is equal to 2¼ teaspoons of yeast. We buy it in bulk, so I never get the little packages, so I don't. So I gotta measure it out. 1.5 cups of water, 2¼ teaspoons of yeast. That's the right measurement for all this. Right in. 2. 1/4. Okay, guys, and then we're going to check back in a second. Oh, hold on. Give it a good stir, and then we're going to check back and see if our yeast is alive, okay? So we're going to stir that up. So we're just trying to dissolve that covering that's on the yeast right now, okay? You can see how the water clouds like that? That's good. So you can see how the water clouded? That's all that stuff dissolving off the yeast, okay? So we'll check back in a second, and we'll see if our yeast is alive. It's been about 5 minutes. And so other people will call this proofing, okay? So all proofing means is prove your yeast works. So think of proofing and proving, okay? So I want you guys to see this. You see all this scum? See that? That's my yeast. That's my yeast telling me it's alive, okay? So what yeast does is it eats sugar and it burps out carbon dioxide, and that's what makes dough rise. It's a really cool process. So after about 5 minutes, if you don't start to see this, your dough your yeast might be dead, and you might need to try a new yeast, or maybe your water wasn't warm enough or it was too hot. You know, there's a couple different ways to troubleshoot, but this is what you should see after about 5 minutes. You can see that layer of scum right there. That's what I want. Okay, and for you guys at home, if you're working with yeast, either keep it in the fridge or the freezer. That'll keep it in basically like a hibernation state until you're ready to use it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our yeast. So remember, this is 1 tablespoon of brown sugar, 1.5 cups of warm water, and then 2.25 teaspoons of yeast. To this, I'm gonna add about 1 tablespoon of melted butter, all right? So I wanted to wait for this to cool down, because if I put super hot butter in there, it's gonna try to kill the yeast, and I don't want that. So do cool melted butter right in there. Okay, we're gonna come back here, give it one more stir, and then we're gonna make our dough. So I'm gonna grab my yeast. So we're just gonna give it a stir, get everything mixed up. See how frothy that is? Like, you can see that. It starts to smell like, you guys have ever been in a bakery where it smells like beer? That's what that smell is, okay? Oh, also do not be confused. They do use yeast in beer making. It is different than yeast in baking, so make sure you get baker's yeast. Comes in a couple different ways. Like I showed you, there's blocks of it that's like instant yeast. So there's a couple different ways. We'll talk about that. So I'm gonna grab my salt, my 1 cup measure, my flour, and my yeast. So we're gonna come over to the KitchenAid, okay? You can absolutely do this by hand. It's just a little extra work. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna use our dough hook attachment today, okay? So we're making dough, so we're gonna use the dough hook attachment. This is gonna call for right around 4 cups of flour, but I'm gonna start with about 3.5. It's easier to add flour back in rather than to make it more moist. So I'm gonna start with 3.5 cups, and we'll see where we're at, okay? So remember, guys, when you're scooping flour, fluff it, get a full scoop, come over the top, and then just level, okay? That's what a cup is. Don't smash the flour down. You want to fluff it. So fluff it. Get a nice level scoop, okay? 2. Fluff it. 3. Okay, now we're going to get about half a scoop. So this is what we're going to start with, okay? To this, I want to add about 2 teaspoons of the kosher salt, just right in the flour. Okay. Okay, guys. Don't let your salt go anywhere. We're going to use that later, so, you know, don't lose it. Then we're going to throw on our dough hook attachment. Okay, we're going to raise it, and we're going to let it go for a couple seconds just to get the salt mixed in with the flour, okay? Okay, so this has been mixing for about 30 seconds. All right, guys, so we're basically just gonna take our yeast mix and we're gonna dump it in there, but I wanna do this very slowly because the flour is gonna poof on me. So start really slow and then you can start speeding it up, okay? So just right in there. And remember, the steps are gonna be exactly the same if you're just doing it by hand. Try to get all that stuff out. Okay, I'm gonna put that off to the side. Okay. Now we're just going to let it go. I can start to turn up the speed a little bit. I don't need it too high. But, so the dough hook attachment is basically a corkscrew. And as the flour gets absorbed, it's going to start forming a ball, and it's going to wrap around that dough. You'll see it as we go. So I'm going to let this go for another 20 seconds. I'm going to scrape the sides to get the rest of that flour in there, and then we're going to keep going, all right? Okay, so let's scrape the sides. So the only problem with the dough hook is it doesn't reach the outsides of the bowl like the paddle does. So you do have to scrape the bowl a bunch, okay? And that's okay. You know, still does its job really well. Okay. Let it go, start slow. Always start slow, guys, so you don't make a mess. And then we're gonna go. So you can start to see how that dough is starting to form, right? Another 10 seconds. See how it's starting to drag the flour off the sides back into the middle, and then it's going up. Okay, it's looking really good. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna give it one more scrape and then see how it is. Get that flour off the sides, get it into the middle. Guys, I can't stress enough how awesome a kitchen it is. It makes life really, really easy. So now we go. You can start to see the dough starting to form like this, right? Starting to drag the flour off the sides. So this is where we need to start making adjustments. If your dough feels too dry, add tablespoons at a time of water, okay? If your dough feels really sticky, I'm less concerned about that, but you know, if we need to, we'll add tablespoons of flour if we need to. So let's get this into a ball. See how it's getting everything? So it's gonna start forming a ball in about 15-20 seconds. You can see that ball forming like this. Okay? Done. See how it formed that ball? So what I wanna do is I just wanna put my finger in. It feels a little sticky, and that's okay for right now because we have to mess with this a little bit. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna drop our hook. Okay, get all the dough off, put this off to the side. Okay, and now we're gonna bring our bowl. Okay. We're gonna grab our flour. And we're just gonna go to a clean work surface, guys. Right over here. We're gonna grab our bench scraper too, so we're just gonna get to a clean surface, okay? So guys, anytime you're working with a dough that's sticky, you're always gonna flour your surface, okay? You can do it like, you can do it like this. You can just do it like a normal person and sprinkle it. You know, whatever makes you happy. Okay, so we're gonna get our dough up out. So I want you guys to sort of see how sticky this is right now. So it's not like super sticking to my hand, but it's still sticky. It's tacky, okay? See, like some came off there. So I'm gonna put this on a nice floured surface. We're always gonna put a little bit of flour right over the top of it, not a lot. Remember, I'm not trying to add a ton more flour to this, and we're gonna start working the dough. So guys, just if you're like, hey, this looks familiar, this is pizza dough. The only difference was I added brown sugar instead of white sugar. I added the melted butter instead of olive oil, but we're basically making a pizza dough right now, okay? And we're just gonna work it. So the reason we're working it is we wanna create that gluten and it gives it that nice chew. So if you see any sticky parts, just add a little bit more flour right on it. You don't need a lot. It'd be a very light touch with the flour at this point, okay? Press it, work it, squish it down. Okay. So this dough is still gonna need to rise a little bit, but if I just put this in a bowl, it's gonna be huge. You need a really big bowl for this. So what I like to do is, okay, so smash it down. Okay, so grab yourself if you want to do it all at once, grab yourself a big bowl, that's fine. I'm gonna do it in a hotel pan, okay? I'm gonna grab my nonstick spray. But if you want to do this with canola, that's fine. So this is just to keep it from sticking and to keep it moist. And we're just gonna do a nice spray. And we're gonna break this in half, okay? It's easier to work with when it's in half. So we're gonna take each half and form a ball. Work it a little bit. This doesn't need to be as perfect as pizza dough, but we're still gonna feel sticky. Work a little more flour in there. I'm just gonna work it. Then we're gonna get it to form into a nice ball. Okay. Okay, one. It smells really good. I like the smell of this. Okay, smash it down. We're gonna start to form a ball. See how it's sticking a little bit there? Little flour, little flour. I mean, I make it sound so severe, but don't be afraid of adding flour. Just don't add a lot at a time. Add very little amount. A little bit of flour goes a really long way, okay guys? So we're gonna get a second ball. Okay. So we're gonna put some, so this has the tendency to dry very, very quickly when it's exposed to the air. So number one, you can either put a little bit of canola oil over it. I'm just gonna do the nonstick spray. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this over plastic wrap. If you're doing this at home, what you're gonna wanna do is basically get a bowl, get a damp kitchen towel, and cover the top of your bowl with the kitchen towel, and that'll help keep it moist, okay? So I'm just gonna wrap this. Okay guys, so this is where it's going to differ from what I do versus what you do. If you have one of these in your kitchen, you're a very lucky person. So always check your water. It's going, it's fine. It's getting ready to start bubbling. It's okay. Just always keep an eye on your water. Also let you know, I have my oven preset to 375 right now. I'm actually going to turn it off so you guys don't hear it. We have in the kitchen what's called a proofing cabinet or a heating cabinet, okay? It's got a couple different settings. So you can either use this to keep food warm above 135, so you know it stays out of the danger zone, or we can use it to proof. What proofing means is, like I said, it's proving. This dough is gonna double in about 30-45 minutes with the right conditions. This is very warm, it's very moist, okay? So mine's about 95 degrees, that's perfect. You don't want it too hot. There's a little tray with water in there with a heating element under it that creates steam, and it creates a really moist environment. Remember, yeast is a bacteria. Bacteria love warm, they love moist. So this is a good bacteria, this is what we're trying to use. So we're trying to create a lot of it. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna put this in here. Okay. If you guys are doing this at home, what you're gonna do is you are going to preheat your oven to 150. If it's a real warm day, don't worry about it. It's gonna rise on its own. If it's a cold day like today is, you're gonna preheat your oven to 150. You're gonna turn it off. You're gonna crack the oven, and you're gonna put the bowl with the damp kitchen towel into the oven, and you're just gonna let it sit for about an hour. Okay. So given an hour, this will double in size, and then we're basically ready to use it. Okay. So we're gonna let this go, and then we'll check back on it. Okay. Okay guys, our dough's been proofing for about an hour, and as you can see, so look how much it rose from what it started with, all right? I mean, you're not gonna end up with, we're gonna punch it back down, but you know, so this is what we're talking about when your dough, we're looking for our dough to rise. You want it to get much bigger, basically doubling in size. So I'm gonna come back over to my floured surface. I also got a small bowl, okay? So we're not gonna do too much today, we'll just do a little bit of this. Okay, so I'm taking my dough. So we're gonna basically roll it out again. So a little bit more flour. Make sure you always have a floured surface, all right? So what I wanna do is I wanna shape this into like a loaf, kind of like this. Okay. Okay, and what I wanna do is I wanna cut small ribbons off of this, all right? Like that. And then I just wanna work it until it's like a worm. Okay. So, you know, when we're doing the bites, you want them decently sized thick, so I'm just going to cut the ends off, cut the end, and then we're just going to do, you know, bite-sized pieces, just like this. Okay, so you see these? So these are our baby pretzel bites. Okay, so I'm just going to put them in a bowl. Make sure they have, they're at least covered in a little bit of flour so they don't stick. So we'll do another one. If you guys want to do the actual pretzel twist, you want to make like big pretzels, just sort of twist it over on itself like this. I don't think this recipe works well for the big pretzels. I like the bites in this one. So we're just gonna. All right, so this is how many we'll do today. So guys, I'm gonna stop working with this dough, so I cannot stress this enough. Take your dough, cover it back up, or it's gonna dry out very, very quickly, okay? So just make sure it's covered, okay? All right, so we got our pretzel bites. We're gonna come on over to the stove. At this point, I'm gonna grab a sheet with parchment paper on it, and I'm also gonna spray the sheet with the nonstick spray, okay? So this will just help make sure they don't stick when they come out of the oven. So a good, generous spray. Okay, so I'm just gonna crank this water up. So we wanna bring this to a simmer. You guys can see how it's not simmering yet, so I'm gonna let this come to a boil and then we'll check back in, okay? Okay guys, so my water's starting to come to a boil. It's not a rolling boil, I don't need that. This is gonna have a tendency to boil over. I just want it hot, right? So remember, what we have in here is about 9 cups of water and about half a cup of the baking soda. This is actually what's going to turn it into a pretzel, okay? The pre-boiling of it. The baking soda helps develop the crust. It makes it soft. So back in the olden days when they used to make pretzels, they used to use lye. And, you know, you use that to dissolve things. You use it to clean clothes, stuff like that. So they don't really use lye anymore. I mean, there's probably a couple people who still do. But it was dangerous because it's a dangerous chemical. So nowadays we basically just use baking soda, okay? So what we're gonna do this part very safely at home. So, and remember, don't overcrowd this. So we're just gonna take our little pretzel bites. I'll do a half and half batch because I don't want to overcrowd the pan. Okay, so we'll do this much and we're just gonna lower them in, okay? And then we're gonna start a countdown. 20 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Get them out. Past the 20, 30 second mark, they're gonna have a real strong chemical taste, okay? We don't want that. So drain them as well as you can. Put them on your little sheet. Keep doing it, okay? So we're gonna do one more batch, and then we'll pop these babies in the oven. Okay. And you can actually freeze this dough. This dough freezes pretty well if you want to make a bunch and then do this later sometime, okay? So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 5. I'm just gonna do this one visually. 20 seconds. That's your timer, okay? Count it out in your head as we do this. Okay. And so these are going to be double cooked. So this is actually boiling and steaming them. As they come out, they're softening. So this is what makes them a soft pretzel. Okay. So this is our second batch. It's like making gnocchi. Okay. I'm just going to dump them there. I'm done. So I'm going to turn my. So if you're doing large batches and this starts to evaporate, don't add any more baking soda. Just add more water to it. Okay. So that's the best way to do it. Okay, so we're going to spread these out. Don't worry, these aren't going to spread on the pan. They're going to bake exactly where you put them. So just give them some room. Okay, so I'm not doing anything with these right now. These are just going to go in the oven as is. Remember, we've already cooked these a little bit. They are not going to take long in the oven, about 5 minutes. 375 degree oven. Set your timer for 5 minutes, okay? I'm going to get these in and we'll check back to see how they look. Moment of truth that they've been in for, I'll be serious, this is 6 minutes, okay? So let's take a peek. You see how they're gold, the second they start to brown, these are done, okay? This is one of those visually when they're done, they are done. All right, so what we're gonna do at this point is I got my melted butter, I got my salt. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna brush them. Ooh, a little butter over the top. Okay. This is basically where they start to taste like Wetzel pretzel. They use fake butter, but you know, this is where it starts to taste like that. So we're just gonna give them a quick brush of butter. But you can see how they turned into pretzel bites. It's cool. So the reason they browned up so well was because of the baking soda bath. Okay. A couple more. And if you don't have a pastry brush at home, you can just use a paper towel and dip it in the butter and just sort of wipe it over. Okay, so now we're gonna give them a sprinkle of salt. You wanna use the coarsest salt you can find because you wanna see it. And we're just gonna go from up high and we're just gonna give them a nice dusting. Okay, the only thing we got left to do is... So you guys can serve this with a nice cheese sauce, mustard, stuff like that. So just feeling, I want you guys to see it. Feel how soft these are? Like, they're just soft. And they're delicious, okay? So I'm just gonna get them into a plate. And they're hot, let them cool down a minute before you start just cramming them in your face. Okay. And so you guys saw, so I only used maybe a quarter of the dough and it made this many. So if you use the full 4 cups of flour and the dough, you're gonna make a lot of pretzel bites out of this. So that's it. That's soft pretzels. Okay guys, thank you and we'll see you next time.